Hey there. Are you in a corporate role and currently wondering if maybe it's time for a change, but you're not really sure what that could even look like or what would be next for you? I'm Brittany, purpose warrior and business coach, and also podcast host of the Unjuggle the Struggle podcast. I was in your shoes a year ago with no real plan. I had no idea what I was going to do. I just knew I had to close one chapter. So what was meant for me would find me. I've recorded this extended episode for you to see firsthand some of the ups and the downs of what making the transition out of corporate might look like. It was one of the toughest things I've ever had to do, and yet it's been one of the most liberating and rewarding gifts I've ever had in my life. So, thanks for tuning in. Take some notes, maybe pick up a little bit of hope and insight, and just know that whatever you're being called into, that whisper, it's not going to go away. It's just going to get louder and louder because what's meant for you will always find you. So maybe it's time to embrace it and to jump. If you have questions or need support, I'd love to chat. Brittany at BrittanyTalinci.com. You got this. Enjoy the episode. Hey guys, I can't even believe it. It was a year ago, just 1 year ago, that I closed that corporate laptop for the last time. What actually happened after that? Well, not what I expected, but also so much more than I imagined. If you're standing at the edge right now, like wondering if it's crazy to want more for yourself, this episode is for you. I'm sharing some real and raw reflections of the last year, including the 5 reflections that I want to just touch on are what I thought would happen versus what actually did, the biggest mindset shifts I had to make, where I wasted time and what I'd do differently, what surprised me the most, and then what's truly possible in 1 year. Not hype, some actual results. So let's go. Come unjuggle the struggle with me. We're working hard, spousing hard, parenting hard, and it all just seems too dang hard. If your dream is just making it to Friday, here's your sign. It doesn't have to be this way. Life's chaos can leave us endlessly driving or perhaps standing in front of the struggle bus. But what if we could change that? In these episodes, we'll tackle the madness head on, step off the hamster wheel once and for all, and choose to dream, explore, connect, and conquer all the things like a pro with less guilt, more time, lots of love, and purpose. I'm Brittany Talinci, your no BS friend. Tune in and transform the chaos into joy. It's time to unjuggle the struggle. It's been a year. Just like that, a year. And while so much has changed, there's still so much the same and still so much untapped possibility available. I feel so fortunate. Fortunate just to have like this space and this time here with you. And I'm just so grateful for the chances that like we've had to reflect together and just to ask ourselves some maybe different questions or to adopt different perspectives. And honestly, like just to dare to dream bigger and deeper too than ever before. And we've gotten to do it here inside these episodes. So in this reflective moment, I just hope that you hear my heartfelt thank you for joining me in this journey. And today I want to share a few major reflections of my 1 year anniversary out of the corporate arena. Now, the short version, right, of the entire story that led me up to giving notice just a year ago, just kind of level set here. I had a phenomenal corporate career. I've always loved business. I started working in corporate America when I was 17 for a major insurance company. And then before long, I found myself basking in 14 years in the staffing industry. In that time, I got to influence some of the largest organizations in the world. And I did everything from being part of the first 8 employees for a small startup where we took the company from $4 million to $34 million in 4 years with less than 20 of us. That was a pretty impressive lift, all the way to launching major operational initiatives and creating award-winning teams on a global scale for a $5.6 billion international organization. So now kind of that you got the details on, okay, there's my resume, I guess, my corporate resume. How the heck did I get here? And why did I walk away from all of it? Well, again, I want to keep this part of today's episode short. I walked away because I had a moment where I found myself asking, what is this all for? And the more that I demanded to find out an answer to that question, the more curiosity was created. And then one thing just led to the next. And after it was about a year and a half of working through like that whisper on my heart that there has to be more than this. Like, what is this all for? I finally knew like that the roar had grown so loud that I had no choice but just to surrender to a higher plan and a higher purpose. And that was my option, honestly. So I pivoted, AKA I quit. I really didn't have a plan other than I had dabbled a little bit in coaching. Like I had played just a little bit to kind of see, hey, maybe I'm being called here. I just knew that what was meant for me would find me and that I had to close one chapter in order to create space in my life for whatever that meant to find me was. So 30 days after leaving my corporate job, I had a book deal. 3 months later, I would start this podcast. 6 months after leaving, I would be sharing my story on public stages. And by 8 months, I would be a best-selling author in Christian leadership. Like, tell me all of that doesn't just about sound crazy, right? Like it's crazy. And then it's probably, about the 11th month mark, I started kind of having that feeling. There was just this different pull on my heart. And it was one that revealed that I had almost shown myself and some others the things that were actually possible when you lean into and when you're willing to like obediently surrender. And that now in this season, I needed to serve through that lens and to impact and to grow and to lead others in how to do the same for themselves. And now here we are. And by the time this episode releases, like I'll actually be in launch week where I have officially opened the doors to my signature coaching program that gives access to a 20 lesson e-course where I walk my clients step by step how to identify their purpose-driven business idea, how to actually validate it if it's something that could be profitable and something that they could really turn into like this legacy making type of business, and then how to actually stand up and launch their business from ground up, step by step, from idea to ready for paying clients. And I bundle that all with 6 personalized one-on-one activation sessions with me, strategizing and getting like all up in building these businesses alongside folks. So in a matter of 10 to 12 weeks, like as you've gone from idea to now you're ready for payment, as you solve a real problem for real people, it's amazing. And I'm looking for 10 folks to kick this journey off. So it's amazing what can happen in a year. It's amazing what can happen in 10 to 12 weeks. And I'm just so excited. So that's the story. Those are some of the outcomes. But again, I want to take just this time to go even deeper. So the very first place that I want to start this reflection, and of course, like sometimes when I do these reflective kind of episodes, I just, my hope is that they're I'm recording them with the hope and the intention that you're going to find pieces of your own story in here too. And that when you do, you'll feel inspired and I don't know, maybe even like prepared. You'll feel prepared to navigate what a big change might look like for you too. And obviously, we all have our own stories and we all have our own journeys and paths that we take. However, for as much as we are all divinely created uniquely, we usually seem to have a lot more in common than we often give ourselves credit for. So, like I said, the first place that I want to start today, let's just talk about um, what I thought would happen versus what actually happened. So I thought one of the things that probably actually held me back for a while was I thought that I'd lose a lot of my friends because they wouldn't understand or they wouldn't be like willing to ride in this journey with me as I was going to be doing something different and in a different capacity than they had previously known. I also thought, and we could even say like I was fearful. I thought our finances would completely go down the toilet and I would be forced to, I don't know, like pick up a little side gig here or there, or that I would have to do something maybe even that I didn't want to, in order to keep my family afloat. And that definitely wasn't my intention with making the change. I also thought that I was going to have to work a crap ton harder. And what I mean by that is in corporate, okay, yes, I was responsible for a lot of heavy lifts in the organization, but I was never doing it without my team by my side. And I knew the rules and I knew how to navigate them well. So, accomplishing whatever task, no matter how big in corporate, I knew how to do it. I knew how to do it efficiently. So, from a actually having to work really hard for stuff, I knew that was going to look a little different. I also thought that I would have to fight hard for opportunities to come my way. Like I was willing to accept that I was going to be a newbie outside of corporate, doing my own thing, and that I didn't know the rules per se, or like I didn't know the who, what, where, when, or how. And then I also really thought that like I was, I joke on podcasts all the times that I tried to do everything I could to put myself almost through a pre-identity crisis, because I would say I was fearful, or I thought that I was going to lose myself in this identity of not having a paycheck or not having a title. And honestly, I was really concerned how that would impact my self worth, because I had been doing that whole high achieving thing, that whole climbing the corporate ladder thing. Uh, I had been doing it for so long. And even though I was aware of that piece and the identity that can often come with that, again, I was navigating unknown territory and I was concerned how much that could potentially like rear an ugly head and how lost I would feel. Show what actually happened. Um, Talk about the relationships first. So we did lose some relationships, but if I'm really honest with myself, I don't think that that really had so much to do with the job changes as much as simply just outgrowing and being in different seasons of life. And that's okay. As far as our finances, so we got smarter with our finances. And while sure, yes, like obviously we don't contribute nearly as much to retirement accounts as we once did, it doesn't mean we're not capitalizing and leveraging the heck out of what we do have, though. So the change, what it did for us is it like forced us, it demanded that we be smarter with our money, that we actually had a heightened awareness and also heightened gratitude for the excess in our life. And it in a really beautiful way, it did again press on, however you want to say, like it allowed us to tap into other available means that were right at our fingertips. So it in a way, it actually forced us to work smarter, not harder for our money. And that has been I mean, that's been definitely a big part of the journey over the last year, and it's been really, really wonderful. So that's been something positive. Another one. Okay. So the thought that, the thought that I would have to work harder, that's a different one. Um, and I say that because, so back in corporate, sure, like I would have to pull some long days here and there, but the work was easy. And I just had gotten to a point in my career where my teams were so empowered and capable. So there was nothing that we couldn't do together. And the work was, even though we were doing big things, the work itself was easy. So in entrepreneurship, okay, with no real plan, especially at the beginning, I would say I was maybe 1 to 2 months in to my entrepreneur journey. And I realized that I really didn't have any structure to my day. And in not having any structure, I really wasn't doing much. So I would say that I struggled with time management probably until about December, which would have been like the 9, 10 months from my quit date. I had found myself in a position with a message, a podcast, a best-selling book, an aspiring speaker, and I really didn't know how to like effectively use those things or how to manage them all together as a cohesive brand or business. And it was about that time that I really had to start holding myself accountable to planning my weeks. Like I started knowing exactly when I was going to write and record and create material for my podcast. I knew exactly when I was going to be doing my social media posts. I knew exactly when my calendar was going to allow me to start coaching clients or even to attend my own coaching and mentorship investments. So when I started managing my calendar, including taking the last hour of every Friday to look at my numbers and to actually like reflect on a week in review, while that's also when I was planning my upcoming week, that's when I really started to see some momentum and the focus start to take shape in my business and in my life. And then all of a sudden, I started feeling a heck of a lot less guilty again because I knew what was getting done each week and where I could move things around if we wanted to, take the random trip here or do this random thing there. Now, so yes, like I have structure in my weeks, but even as a budding entrepreneur focused on like crushing my business goals this year, I start early in the day. I still take time to enjoy my kids in the morning and get them to school. I work my business during the day just through the strategic tasks. And then even too through just life-giving conversations throughout the day. And then most of the time, I'm wrapping up my days before the kids even get home from school. So I'd say, from a working harder, yeah, it just looks different. It looks different. I would also say, like, I do work more in the evenings after the kids go to bed, which is new because in corporate, like, I would be too dog tired. And when I logged off at 5, like I wanted to be done. I wanted to log out 5. I wanted to be done. So these days I am finding like more rest with the kids and the hubby after school. Like it's nice to take that break a little bit. It's nice to reconnect, to recharge, refuel, all those things. And then jump into it. Like if I have a big launch, for instance, or something like that, I go back into the office in the evenings after they've gone to bed and it's like focus and it's good time. So it's not that I'm working harder. I do think I probably work about the same. No, I probably work more hours. I probably work more hours in my business today than I was working in corporate, but it's not from a like hustle type of place. I still have all of this time freedom in my business and with my life and in my relationship. So work just looks different, I would say is that one. So, okay. As far as like opportunities and thinking that I was going to have to like claw, yeah, no, that was a big, that was a big misconception because nothing was ever forced. Like as I look back over this last year, one door truly led to the next, and like naturally, and it just so much so it flowed in abundance. One conversation or relationship or book launch or trip or whatever it was, like opportunities were everywhere. And I said yes. I said yes to lots of opportunities. I actually think that whole saying yes thing to everything, I think that's worth looking at too, because I'm not sure if it was just like my yes season. And there's nothing wrong with that. However, again, in a state of reflection, I think I did get to a point where I was so busy saying yes that I overpacked the schedule a little bit. And while I had been really intentional about creating space for the season to just evolve as it needed to, there was a point where it was like back to back events or book launches in New York, Times Square, like where it just got a little crazy, a little fast. So while saying yes had its benefits, 1,000%, I think there were also times where it was maybe a little more costly in different ways than I would have liked. So I know for 2025, for instance, I've already seen the ways that I'm being asked to use more discernment in my choices. And that is landing really good. That feels good. So the lesson learned from like fast and, going to keep moving and growing. Also exercising discernment when I'm looking at these opportunities and what really makes most sense right now for this season, for the business, all the things. And then lastly, the piece about my identity, because I think this is a really, really big one too. Again, I thought I'd struggle with who I was if I didn't have a paycheck or a title to introduce myself with, or to, attach, right? Like to dictate like my value on paper. And, like, oh my gosh, I'm going to meet this new soccer parent. What am I going to say I do? Um, while I was never more unsure of the plan in my life, in my day to day, well, yeah, like I was so, while I was so unsure of my plan and my day to day activities and tasks, I had never been more confident in who I was and who I was meant to show up as. And I really started to relish in not knowing every single move of every single day or every single report or every single problem. And it became so liberating to finally, and I say finally, not have to have it all figured out and to just kind of let go and surrender to a bigger plan that was clearly unfolding. And that also happened like a deep soul level. I got to let go and unclench the fists of control on my life. And the more that I surrendered, the more my heart was opened, the more clear my head became, and the more like grounded I became in every single piece of my identity. And it felt really good. It still feels really good. All right. Now, on to the second reflection of a year out of corporate. What were some of the biggest mind shifts that I had to make? Mind shifts. Okay. The new perspectives, right? Like I became aware of every day. I know I'm still processing, I'm still learning every day, thank gosh. I truly didn't realize just how much so like in the box I was operating in. Any 8 to 5, 9 to 5 job operates under a very similar set of conditions. Like, here's the job, do the job and get paid and rewarded for doing said job. Keep job, unless company wants to move on, repeat. Now, what I'm not going to do is bash the 8 to 5 or the 9 to 5 structure, because it served me very well for a very long time. And I had no issues with it. And I was able to create boundaries and capitalize on it and earn all the trips and learn all the things. What I will say is that the mindset that we operate in when we're in the box, or I often refer to it as the arena, like when you're in that corporate arena, when that's the arena that you're playing in, routine feels really good. Staying within defined guidelines is encouraged and rewarded. And you have like this clearly laid out forward path that you walk, and that feels good. And all of that requires that you have a certain kind of mindset. As I started to play more in this entrepreneurial space, I started to see how vastly different the entrepreneurial arena operates. It's a place where out of the box thinking is actually an asset, where you're constantly like operating out of this what others would say is normal. So you always have this underlying experience of like imposter syndrome and doubt constantly wrestling. It's this arena where possibility and potential and income and impact and opportunity, they are like legit, actually really unlimited. Like there's no defined path. There's there's no just one way. And I'll say that with great freedom, okay, comes great responsibility, comes great possibility. It has been a ride, and it has been so much fun, and also it's been growth on hyperspeed. So specifically some mindset shifts that I've made over the last year, and I've thought about this. I'll give you the top 5 for me. So the first one is the entire mindset and operating shift that happened from head to toe in this concept of obedient surrender. So I talk about this one often. Uh, the story behind it is like I had this moment over the last year where I found myself literally, okay, forehead in the sand of Virginia Beach, like taking my posture of surrender at the time. And in that moment, I recognized like just how open and free I had become, and that I had spent months at that point kneeling in surrender. But, but, that I needed to start moving forward. I needed to actually start walking in surrender. And those are two very different postures. So from a mindset perspective, I went from a place of like doubt, kneeling in surrender. Sometimes it's a lot of the questions were like, well, I'm just going to keep showing up, but I don't really know where this is going. So I went from a place of doubt to clarity, where it was like, wait a second, walking in surrender. I know I'm here for a higher purpose, a higher plan. I see these gifts that I've been, that have been laid upon my heart and my soul and my being. I know what I'm supposed to do with them. So that's what I mean. Like I went from a place of doubt to clarity, from a place of feeling weak in my surrender to like confidently seeing the strengths and the results of my obedience. And there's just this shift that takes place when you know there is a plan in place. So you sit with that and you learn to get still and you say yes to just letting things unfold the way that they need to. And then that transitions into a deep knowing that there is a plan in place and that your movement and action and doing, not rest, are required. And so my actionable advice for you on this one, like that's a faith thing right there. You got to sit in your surrender as much as you got to walk in your surrender. And the only way that you're going to know is like really tapping into that faith thing right there. Okay. The second mindset shift that took place was coming to this place of like recognizing that I can control and what my standards of success or like enough could be. Like, what would be enough? What do I want to define success as? And I saw that I didn't have to be the person who had everything figured out. And maybe, I don't know, maybe you hear that and you roll your eyes a little when you hear that because you're like, come on, nobody has everything figured out. Well, of course not. Like what I'm referencing is just that in corporate, I spent a lot of my days confident that I had the solution to the problem that someone was inevitably going to call me to fix anyway. In entrepreneurship, I've had to learn to get really comfortable knowing that there is going to be knowledge and experience that I can absolutely apply and add value to a room. And at the same time, I'm learning and a newbie in a lot of these rooms I'm walking in right now. And like, so perfect example, like I haven't been speaking for 10 years, for instance. I haven't had a chance to buy or sell a business yet. Like there's things that I just haven't touched quite yet. But what I do have control over is things like activating my courage to at least just get in the room or to join the conversation or to show up anyway. It's the courage to get curious, courage to show up. And it's my courage is more than enough for these rooms. And I'm really, really proud of that. So that was another one. Also, too, with courage, like it's the courage to, like, it's the courage to get curious. And I pause a little bit here because I know this is actually coming up as a theme for me. So I've recently said this on a few podcasts that I've been a guest on, is that I think curiosity is one of the most underutilized tools that we all have in our tool belt. We become so complacent that we forget how to get curious about the world around us or about the relationships we have or about why we do the things we do or why we think the things we think or why we believe the things we believe. My team's always got like this housekeeping spiel from me every year about what they could expect with my leadership style, because it was always one that it was based off of questions. Like I've always asked questions. It's always been my thing. It's the way that I understand. It's the way that I want to learn more. It's the way that I want to create space for possibility. What I didn't quite realize was that I was always really good about asking questions of others. And it wasn't until I started utilizing that skill to crack open my own stuff, heart, desires, purpose, mindset, relationships, etc. It wasn't until I used that curiosity, honestly, on myself that my life changed. Like when I got curious about myself, who would have thought? Like I actually learned a lot. And I'm pretty dang proud of the woman who stands back at me in the mirror these days. And that feels really, really good. So I got curious and I let my courage take me through that one. Another mindset shift that I'm still working through, and I actually pray frequently about, that I hope it's a short season of this, but it's tough for me and my experience, my personality. Sometimes it's tough flying solo most days. Sure, I have my mentors, I have my extended communities, and I've made so many powerhouse, especially women friends who are just like cheering me on, and I get to cheer them on. So what I mean with this is just like I've spent over a decade leading high performing teams. So whatever big mountains were ahead of us, we got to tackle them together. And I prefer it that way because I will always believe that 2 of the right heads are better than 1, that 4 of the right heads are better than 2. I've just seen that teamwork makes things possible. So currently being a one-woman show, like, outside of the times that the hubby is helping me here and there with stuff, like being a one-woman show is just different for me. I don't love it, and that's okay. So my hope is that it will just continue to like fuel a fire in me just keep making these big moves that'll allow me to grow out the best team of superstars there ever was, and to be able to stand on those mountains together again one day soon, like building lives on our terms and showing up for our families and inspiring others to go big or go home. Cause I know that's meant for me. So I know it'll happen. It's just in the season right now where I'm at. Being solo is a little tough sometimes. So I'm learning to enjoy those pieces of it though. And then the fifth mindset shift that has really taken hold of my life over the last year is just this concept that faith does not predicate understanding. Basically, this is me having to come to terms that so many of the things like I feel called to say yes to, or so many of the connections or the choices that I make, I may not fully understand that, but I can't wait to fully understand everything or have time, or it doesn't make sense to sit there and overanalyze this or that before like making a move. I'm in a movement season, an action season, a showing up and doing season. And faith is knowing that good things are promised, whether I understand them or not. So the perfect example of this is like leaving a steady, stable, wonderful job. It didn't make any logical sense. Someday I still, it still doesn't. Like from the outside, it still doesn't make logical sense. But I stepped out of the corporate box in an act of full faith and trust. And you know what? The journey has been so good, so sweet. So I've learned, and I continue to remind myself daily that it's not about my understanding. We're given opportunities and choices and this life to go out and make good with it. So I just keep showing up every day and taking the next step in front of me. And that's pretty liberating too. Okay, now we are on to the third reflection, where I wasted time and what I would do differently. Hands down, the first thing that comes to mind is me. I wasted time getting in my own way. So the biggest time suck over my last year was how many times I sat there in complete doubt and almost like down talking myself into believing that I was starting from scratch. I convinced myself that it was just my turn to be humble and it was okay to be a beginner again, and to basically just set my expectations accordingly. The perfect example of this is I was hosting a webinar. It was my first one. So to, paint the scene with this, at this point I had prepped. I created 100-slide presentation. Oh my gosh, if PowerPoint wasn't the bane of my existence before, never have I ever created 100-slide PowerPoint. But you better believe this thing was legit. So not only do I put in the time like creating this thing and knowing it's jam-packed with valuable info, and then I even went as far as talking about it a little bit on socials and asking some folks to sign up. And it's like, it's the morning of, I'm ready. I'm excited. I'm feeling good. Like I know I get to teach in this new space and I'm going to finally be able to get some information in the hands of someone who's going to need it. And I look at my husband right before, and I kind of take this deep breath. And I know the intention was, I'm centering myself. And I look at him and I say with a big old smile on my face, babe, I'm proud of myself. I've shown up. And even if just one person other than my sister or my coach stays on until the end, that's going to be my definition of success today. And you want to know what happened? The only people I had on the call were my sister and my coach. No one else even showed. Yep. And as anyone would in this scenario, I, of course, had all of my emotions of disappointment and the what did I do wrong and all the things. And it wasn't actually even until like the next day that I had this moment that I realized, wait, why on earth would I cut myself so short? Never, ever, 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 ever would this whole like just one person staying like be an actual like of what I would consider a real goal or a standard like I would actually have for myself. That's not how I'm wired. And side note here, like I 1,000,000% agree with the power of just one and the importance and the impact of just one. So don't get that confused. It was just this particular situation was not about that. This particular situation was me lowering my standards because I was too fearful to actually shoot high as a, quote unquote beginner in this new entrepreneurial webinar space. Mm-mm. It wasn't fair to me. I undercut myself because I had convinced myself that I was too new in this space to have success of a more experienced entrepreneur. And that's when it hit me, like the reality, the check-in of, hey, wait a second moment where it was like, I've got experience in settings with strategy and execution and a brilliance that has served far and wide. I didn't come to play small. I may not have the title I once did in this new arena, but I am not starting from scratch. I'm starting from experience. And I needed to start acting like it. And that was going to start the level of expectations like I was going to need to start putting on myself. So I recognized like just how much I still brought to the table and how much that knowledge and that experience and that passion for corporate and business was needed desperately to serve in this new space now too, from experience, not scratch. Shoe, by far, I wouldn't have wasted time convincing myself that I was the newbie on the entrepreneurial block who like still had to earn my stripes. It doesn't work that way in this new space. Like from the start, I wish I would have led with that, and by playing bigger earlier, I would have had the bigger results I was made for. Another thing I would have done differently, and I found myself a little surprised by, and why it's such a big part of what I teach my clients now, is actually validating the business idea. In my own experience with this, I uncovered that 82% of businesses are actually, or 80 or 82, sorry. It might be 80. I think it's 80. I think it's 80% of businesses are actually like still operational in their first year. And of the 20% that fail, 42% of them cite that the reason they fail is because there's no need or market for their business product or service. What? Translation here, this means that a good chunk of these businesses are failing because they didn't actually have proof that folks are going to pay for the thing that they were offering right out of the gates. Like I almost did the same thing. So that webinar that I told you about with the 100 slides, I thought folks wanted to talk about burnout and that they were looking for solutions to help them work through burnout. There I was with my fancy webinar, and I even had like this nice framework to teach folks like how to unjuggle the struggle with burnout. And I started marking it, and I started talking about it more, and just having these conversations. And you want to know what happened? I had 3 folks in a matter of 1 week reach out to me and ask me the exact same question. And went something like this: Brittany, I've got this idea that I've had on my heart for a long time. I know I'm made for more. Can you help me start my business like what you've done? Update. That has nothing to do with burnout directly. On one hand, like I had this moment where I had to analyze what was going on. On one hand, my messaging was working because folks started to associate what I could offer with their solution to build a different life and to inevitably stop some of the burnout that they were feeling. And yet, my offer wasn't actually aligned to what they wanted and would be willing to pay for. So it wasn't until actually like having conversations and taking a chance to launch something that I was given this beautiful gift of feedback. And so you better believe, like with my background, I knew it was my chance to pivot. And you bet your bottom dollar I did. And so now I offer exactly what I know folks in my community need, that direct path to building a life they want. And most of the time, like it's through launching and standing up their own purpose-driven businesses, just like what I did. And this is also coming through as just a place of like importance for what surprised me and what I would do different. I would pick a lane. And what I mean by this, so at first I was really, really stubborn with the idea of having to choose just one way I could serve and just one service I could offer. Part of that, I think, is that I pride myself on being really versatile. And there was a reason that I was always jumping into new teams and projects in corporate. I have some tendencies to get really bored really easy. And so I was fearful that I was going to be leaving someone out who I could potentially be impacting. I was fearful I would get bored and that I wouldn't be using all of my skills if I niched down. Well, then I had this like visual of a horse race pop into my brain, and I immediately saw the facts for what they were. In order to start the race, the horse and the jockey are assigned a gate. This is the gate that they're going to actually like be able to get going from, like the start. That's how you get in. Once the gate opens, they're going to ride in their designated lane for a short period of time before being able to cover the entire lanes of the track. You got to start the race coming out one singular A gate. Once you start, though, then you get to float and you get to jive and you get to maneuver across the lanes of the topics that you believe you've got value to serve with. But intentionally and initially, pick a gate. When I did this, so much got easier for me in my business and my messaging because I was able to actually like speak to that one thing. And that made it just clearer for others to really decide like if I had what they needed, or if maybe I wasn't selling something they buy. Either way, like at least we both knew, right? So summing up the reflection for number 3, like where I wasted time and what I would have done differently. The first one being, I wouldn't have convinced myself that I was so small, and I would have recognized that I wasn't starting from scratch. I was starting from experience. Second one is I wasted time creating an offer and a webinar and a few freebies even based on what I thought people wanted. And what I would have done differently would have been just having actual conversations much earlier on to actually validate the idea before building. And third, I wasted time fighting the concept of niching down. I would have adopted the perspective of being okay to start the race coming out of one gate and to move through the course as I ran the race. That would have served me really, really well at the beginning. All right. Reflection number 4. What surprised me the most over the last year? I had a few surprises, okay, but I think the thing I find myself reflecting on the most is that most folks seem to have a really large gap in what it means to do good business. And I don't actually think that that's a like lack of experience or lack of a knowledge thing. I think it's that the typical entrepreneur that at least I've been exposed to thus far in my journey, they are so busy trying to figure it all out, so busy trying to make this whole thing work, like the idea scale or this membership launch or whatever it is. They get so busy that basic people care goes out the window. And that surprises me because I think it's so sad. And I just think it's such a missed opportunity to really like fully serve. I absolutely have already experienced it myself, like where I purchase a program or coaching or I get into a community and these big promises are made. And I'd say that the promise isn't always met or it's met at like the most basic minimal level. They send one confirmation email and then you never hear from them again. Or they offer you the free training and then the link doesn't even work, or they say they help with this part of your business, but then they have zero connections or directions to point you in for the other pieces of your business. So I just, so much business seems to be so transactional. And I've been really surprised by the conversations that happen behind closed doors with these entrepreneurs that say that they're having a tough time scaling their business or keeping people in their memberships or just, and I just think it goes back to the basics. Like, are you not just delivering, but are you over delivering for those people who you already have in your customer base? Like overserve there, and by nature, it will expand. And the best part of this is like this observation is I really do believe that we're all capable of doing that, of just slowing down just a little bit to really like be present and to water what we have. Because when we water what we have, it multiplies. Okay, with all of that said, reflection number 5, what is truly possible in 1 year? Whew. So I will preface this reflection with the disclaimer that we all work at different speeds and our circumstances are all unique, just like our networks and our level of resourcefulness and our willingness to be curious, etc. I believe that anything is possible, especially when you're willing to play the long game and just purely show up in consistency and serve well. I did already mention some of my results. Like they were the results I mentioned though, that they were, for instance, they were tied to the building of my personal brand. So a book deal, a podcast, a bestseller title. But since we're like, I want to be really truthful. It wasn't until the end of 2024. And at that time when I knew that's when that pull started happening, like that I was meant to help and serve and lead and teach others how to do this too for themselves. It wasn't until in that moment that I recognized, okay, great. I have built a personal brand, which is amazing, but I haven't actually established a business. And that bothered me to my core because I know that I am made for business and to serve in this space. That was my pivoting moment. So, about the end of December-ish, I started having like this realization. And then in January, I got really clear on what type of business I wanted to build. I validated it through actual conversations. And then I came up with this step-by-step plan to like actually launch my own purpose-driven business. So this included a pivot in my social media messaging, a strategy to make it just super clear who and how I could serve. And then I set goals for myself, like completely optimizing my socials over a 45-day period, and building this like framework, this system that leaned entirely into everything that I knew about business and launching new initiatives and new businesses. And then I implemented my systems and frameworks. 10 weeks later, my business would make its first dollar. So idea $2 was 10 weeks. Woo woo. So the personal brand, definitely. It takes more time for sure. And it's something that I built intentionally every single day. And now here I am in the middle of my launch of these frameworks into an easy to follow step-by-step e-course with those 20 lessons and that personalized kickoff strategy session with me. And I'm just so excited about like what this launch has in store. So I know I mentioned it previously. I've got 10 spots. I'm opening up like my cart, you could say, for 10 days, which means that 10 businesses get launched before summer. Yes. Let's do this thing, right? Okay. This one has been a long episode, and to think that this is just the reflections in regard to like my first year out of corporate as it relates to my business. Can you imagine if we took this lens of reflections in the way that it impacted my family, the way that they grew and our relationships, and how much this is like absolutely enriched our lives? Like, no, it wasn't without some struggle, but hey, that's what this whole podcast platform is all about. So I couldn't even imagine. I'm sure I would talk for 17 more hours about the way that it's impacted our family dynamic and life. It's so beautiful. So my friend, just as we wrap up this deeply personal reflection, I want to leave you with this. A year ago, I didn't have a master plan, and I definitely didn't know how I was going to make it all work. But I knew I couldn't ignore the whisper that I had to tap into the more that was literally waiting for me. And if that whisper has been tugging at your heart too, I just hope this episode served as proof that you don't have to have it all figured out to take the first step, and just to that you're going to learn all of your own lessons along the way in your first year too, and just to see and show how beautiful growth really can be. So my hope for you is that I hope you get curious and that you find your courage to take the next right step, whatever that looks like for you today. Whether you're at the edge of a big decision, or you're in the middle of a messy transition, or just maybe you're just now starting to kind of wonder and ponder, hey, like what else could be possible for me? Just remember, you're not starting from scratch. You're starting from experience, right? From grit, from strength, from purpose. And if nothing else, let this be the reminder that a lot can happen in 1 year. You can build, you can pivot, you can discover a new version of yourself that you've never met before, and fall in love with your inner power, voice, light, and purpose in a new, renewed way. So, like, I want you to ask yourself and really think about it. Like, what will your next year hold? I'll be here cheering you on every step of the way. And then too, just as always, I want to extend, if you're ready to walk this road with some support and clarity and a proven framework, okay, remember that signature program, it's here for you too. So just thank you again. I want to close the same way that I started, I guess. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for being willing to dream. Thank you for trusting me to walk in this journey with you. Here's to your next year of bold moves, deeper purpose, aligned intentions, just this like courageous growth that I hope you go after. So keep going, keep growing, and just know you were made for more. Until next time, bye. Hey, thanks for listening to today's episode. It means a world to me that you're here to ride in the struggle bus with me, and that you're willing to consider different perspectives, tools, and techniques that just might provide a little bit of relief and get you one step closer to the abundance that is available and waiting for us all. I hope you take a moment to grant yourself some grace where you've been denying it, some love where you didn't realize maybe it was right in front of you, and some faith where you thought all was lost. If this episode had an impact on you, would you please share a comment with a review? I'd love to hear what landed for you, and it helps us get the word out to our fellow struggle bus riders. So please review what was impactful for you. Just know these episodes are a pure labor of love in a space where I'm growing alongside you. I'm evolving every day, and I look forward to all the ways and the things and the perspectives and opinions and choices that will change over the course of time in my own life, day to day. Until next time, just know that you are loved, You are divinely cared for. And in the struggle, the journey of this life really is beautiful. I'm glad that we're in it together. Cheers.